So what the Brazilian presidency has done is try to collate all of the big contentious issues under a common document that they are calling a Mutirão decision text. Mutirão meaning a sort of collaborative dialogue in Portuguese. And this text essentially has different options and proposals for some of the major issues such as adaptation finance, Article 9.1, unilateral trade measures, and the way forward for the NDC synthesis report. So the first draft of this text that was produced has many elements that are very important to developing countries. It also has options which are much more moderate and far away from what the demands of developing countries are. The hope is that the G77 in China bloc will be able to continue to exert pressure and ensure that its demands make it into the final iterations of this text. I do expect changes in the second draft, primarily because the options in the previous draft will have to now be whittled down into a final set of options, because the Brazilian presidency is really hoping to gavel through decisions as early as possible and prevent a spillover of the talks beyond Friday. So there is a lot of behind the scenes, closed door negotiations, consultations, informal dialogues happening among the parties, between the parties and the presidency. So I do expect that a lot of change will be reflected in the next iteration. Will these be positive in the direction of what developing countries want? That is yet to be seen. So India and China are two very key players in the world today and also at the climate talks. We are living in a world where the Western countries have retreated on many grounds from their commitments on climate. You have the exit of the United States from the Paris Agreement once again. You have the European Union that continues its use of fossil fuels, and many other developed countries like Australia, Japan, who are also fossil fuel producers and consumers, and therefore have not shown leadership on climate. So in this vacuum, what we are seeing is a changing nature of climate leadership. We have many of the BRICS countries, in fact, China, India, Brazil, even South Africa, Indonesia, starting to show signs of leadership of various forms, be it putting up new climate pledges or investing massively in building domestic green industry, as well as installing large amounts of renewable energy. So currently today, 51% of the world's solar power is produced by countries of the BRICS bloc. So I think the face of climate leadership is rapidly changing. India and China being two of the most populous countries in the world are certainly very much at the heart of this change. China being responsible for both leading on and enabling this transition through its absolute dominance of clean technologies, and India having achieved one of its NDC targets ahead of schedule, and being really a country that is trying various types of policy experiments with decarbonization, be it the Green Steel Taxonomy, be it the National Hydrogen Mission, be it aggressively expanding renewable energy. So today at the Climate Summit, Indian Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav met with the Chinese climate envoy on the sidelines, and they discussed their agreement, alignment and cooperation, especially in their unity as a part of the LMDC bloc, the like-minded developing countries bloc. And that was really symbolic of the kind of changing winds. We need to see more of that kind of cooperation and alignment. Historically, at climate conferences, it used to be the G2, which is US and China, who used to have backdoor, side door deals in the crucial moments to push through. That is how the Paris Agreement was born. That is how many of the major climate moments have occurred in the past few decades. The US is no more on the picture. And certainly a country like China, a country like India will be looking at new alliances, new moments for leadership. So I think it's a very significant moment for both the countries. So the Brazilian presidency has held a vast number of consultations throughout this entire year. The COP30 President Andre Correa do Lago has visited multiple countries and really used diplomacy as a tool. He is a seasoned climate diplomat, and he has used diplomacy as a tool to really advance their agenda as the COP30 presidency. And what we have seen here in Belém is the presidency being very proactive and really trying to usher parties along towards agreement. There was an expectation of an agenda fight on day one. They avoided this by convincing parties to do presidency consultations on the sidelines on some of the most contentious issues. So certainly they have been a very proactive presidency. They are a presidency of skilled diplomats, and they do have an ability to speak both to global north and global south countries. But does this mean that they will still be able to champion the priorities of developing countries in the crucial moments, given that Brazil is also part of the BRICS bloc, is part of G20? That is yet to be seen. So in this process of brokering deals between North and South, are some of the priorities of the South kind of falling by the wayside? I think that is something that remains yet to be proven. So the proposal to transition away from fossil fuels that is being championed by many countries, a number of developed countries, a few developing countries, is it's a heartening initiative, because after the global stock take outcome of 2023, we have not seen further implementation action on paragraph 28 of the global stock take. So this effort to move towards actually operationalizing that by creating a roadmap for transitioning away is a promising initiative. It's a step in the right direction. However, the actual building of this roadmap and the indicators and metrics chosen to design the criteria around the roadmap, it's going to be very crucial, because we will see many efforts to deflect blame and responsibility onto large developing countries or even a wide chunk of the developing world itself. This push is very likely going to come from developed countries, many of whom remain massive fossil fuel producers and consumers even to this day. So this roadmap has to be rooted in historical responsibility, equity, and fairness, number one. Number two, it has to be very clearly tied to means of implementation for enabling the transition away from fossil fuels, be it financing, be it technology transfer, be it clear, concrete initiatives that will help countries implement their NDCs. So the enablers and means of implementation, as well as the barriers that are preventing the transition from happening in many developing countries, these have to be a very crucial part of the roadmap discussion. Without it, it is just a top-down new demand on the developing world, which cannot be accepted.